In the small, quiet town of Rosedale, a peculiar incident was unfolding. Lucy and her best friend Mark were exploring the dense woods behind her grandfather's old farmhouse. The summer air was thick with the scent of pine and the rustle of leaves. They stumbled upon a decrepit well, hidden among the overgrown bushes. "Do you think there's water down there?" Mark asked, peering into the darkness. Lucy shrugged, tossing a pebble into the well. They listened intently, but instead of a splash, they heard a squelching sound, as if the well was filled with something slimy and alive. "Let's go back," Lucy said uneasily. That night, Lucy couldn't shake the eerie feeling. She tossed and turned until sleep finally claimed her. In her dream, she was standing by the well again. A low, guttural whisper emanated from its depths, calling her name. The ground around the well began to writhe, and thousands of worms surged upward, twisting and turning, forming grotesque shapes. Lucy woke up in a cold sweat, her heart pounding. She glanced around her room and screamed. The floor was alive with wriggling worms, their slimy bodies squirming toward her bed. She leapt out, frantically shaking them off her feet. She ran to her grandfather's room, but he was nowhere to be found. Panicked, Lucy fled the house and ran to Mark's place. She burst into his room, gasping for breath. "Mark, the worms. They're everywhere." Mark stared at her, eyes wide with fear. "I saw them too, in my dream. They were trying to pull me into the ground." Together, they decided to return to the well, hoping to find some answers. Armed with flashlights, they navigated through the dark woods. When they reached the well, the ground around it was still, but the air was thick with an ominous presence. Lucy shined her flashlight into the well. The beam of light revealed a seething mass of worms, their eyeless faces turned upwards as if they sensed her presence. Suddenly, the worms began to rise, spilling over the well's edge and advancing toward the children. "Run!" Mark yelled, grabbing Lucy's hand. They sprinted through the woods, the worms relentlessly pursuing them. Lucy tripped and fell, the worms immediately swarming over her. Mark tried to pull her up, but the worms were too many. They crawled up her legs, winding around her arms and neck, pulling her down with an unstoppable force. "Mark, help me!" Lucy screamed, her voice muffled by the wriggling mass. In a last desperate attempt, Mark grabbed a nearby stick and began swatting at the worms. But for every worm he knocked away, two more took its place. Lucy's struggles weakened, her terrified eyes locking with Mark's one last time before she was completely consumed by the writhing horde. Mark, paralyzed by fear and grief, could only watch as the worms retreated into the forest, dragging Lucy's lifeless body with them. The well stood silent once more, its depths filled with an unspeakable horror that would forever haunt the small town of Rosedale.